Geez, that was a weird dream. I didn't even know torrents are that flexible. Right. I need coffee and a good YouTube video to wake me up. Christ, it smells like a dwarf's armpit in here. Alexa, find me a new season of Discovery video.
Here's your video.
How I play the game, as in, don't worry about
Oh, no way. Not this guy. He thinks he knows it all but can't parse higher than 30. Someone really needs to sort this idiot out. Why does my voice sound like a voice actor from a low-budget Korean MMO? If I can just work out how to build a teleporter to get to his world, I can sort him out. Let's hope this worked. See you on the other side.
Don't know what that was. While we know sometimes we have to take what the devs say with a pinch of salt, there's been some little gems they put out there, and while you may think it's been a quiet week for Season of Discovery, from little to no news, you'd actually be wrong. You're probably just not looking in the right place anymore, which can be a little bit irritating, having to check so many different places just to find out what the devs are actually thinking. Starting every video when there's been some news or information from the devs like, "Oh my god guys, this is the biggest news ever." Yeah, it's getting a little bit old, so instead I'll be completely honest right up front. Some of the things we're going to dive into now are so significant to the future of how and what content we receive in Season of Discovery, and even in other versions of the game. The information on its own, without being broken down by me in understandable chunks, could cause a complete meltdown in your brain, because news of such magnitude can only be directly compared to the reaction of an audience hearing Tenacious D performing Master Exploder. I should have just stuck with a, wow, this is the biggest news ever, shouldn't I? Yeah. There's several things to get through, from what raid size Gnomeregon's going to be, how it's going to launch, or should I say open for the first time, potentially new ways to get XP, and I don't mean the fastest way to 40 or anything like that, I mean an actual new way of getting XP completely, potentially, if what the devs are teasing at is true. We're also going to take a look at some of the big crafted items coming in the next phase for each profession, which we won't be focusing so much on the items themselves, but instead the materials that are going to be valuable, because this might then give you something to do over the next week or two, getting some of these materials from maybe fishing or farming in higher level zones. We're also going to look at the future of how content delivery is decided, and why I'm not keen on what's happening right now. We're also going to have a look at how the numbers of Season of Discovery are progressing this late in the phase. I don't mean DPS numbers, I mean numbers of active players, and I actually think that it's going to shock you when you get to see how these numbers have progressed since the video I put out looking at populations a couple of weeks ago. Now, the first piece of news we actually got a bit more inadvertently, because actually telling us the size of Gnomeregon wasn't the intention of the post, which that will become clearer in a minute, but we now know it's a 10-player raid. Now, I know many of us probably suspected it's going to be a 10-player raid because, well, Black Fathom Deeps was. But on the basis that before Season of Discovery launched, we was already told that the likelihood of level 60 raiding will still be 40-player raids.
Raid sizes. I've heard it thrown around that you're actually sticking with 40-man, which, I'll be honest with you, I don't like. I know many people do, but, you know, is there any chance of different raid sizes at 60?
I always want to say there's a chance, but there's nothing for us to promise in that vein.
You know, I've thought about this a lot personally, and what kind of what is the quintessential difference between original WoW and like Burning Crusade or Wrath, and having played through all of 2019, I started a guild at the beginning of 2019 Classic, and it's still together. We're rating ICC now and everything, and I will say that one of the things that's nice about 40-player rating is that not every single person has to be super, you know, you can take friends and family and stuff. Not everyone has to be the highest performing, whereas with the design of Burning Crusade and Wrath, you tend to kind of min-max your roster a little bit more, because you got to get the right buffs, and you got to, everyone really has to kind of do mechanics and do everything, and I think it's a little less social in general because of that. It's rewarding in other ways, and it's a lot easier to manage as a raid leader for sure. But so I think it also comes down to like how do we best spend our time too, is like retrofitting like Molten Core to make it a 20-player raid. Is that a good use of our time? I think as a developer, I think I'd rather put that time into more new original cool stuff. So I don't know. So we'll see there, but never say never.
Had me at least thinking that they might ramp the sizes up a little bit. So BFD 10-man, maybe they'd put Gnomeregan up to 15-man and then scale up to the point where then when we're level 60, we're doing 40-player raiding. Because whilst I know you can amalgamate all of these 10-man raids together to make a 40-man at 60, if we continue doing 10-player raids on the way up, it's going to be a weird transition, especially for smaller guilds like my own, to be fair. Because there's no pressure on having to recruit more people, because there is no larger scale raids at the moment, I think that transition period between level 50 raiding and then level 60 raiding might be a bit strange if it carries on like this. But in case you was wondering, and for me personally, I love the fact that it's going to be a 10-man. I hope everything's 10-man all the way to level 60, but then I would love to see at level 60 it not be 40-man. I would love to see 10 and 25-man personally, but who knows? That could be something that happens, but the devs have already alluded to the fact that that probably won't be the case. So it was Agron that actually put this tweet out, and the primary reason for him putting it out in the first place was to try and get some player feedback on how we feel the raid should actually launch. So should it be open straight away so you can rush to level 40, get in Gnomeregan and start clearing it, or should there be a week delay? Now, I have brushed through a lot of replies, and I see a lot of people saying leave it as it is, a lot of people saying let's delay it by a week so there's not that rush for leveling, so no one feels like they're missing out on anything. This is completely taking away how I play the game, as in don't worry about the fact that yes, I probably will no life launch and try and do it in one sitting, get to 40, and yes, I want to be raiding as quickly as possible, but at the same time, I don't really care whether I hit 40 and go straight into Gnomeregan or I hit 40 and then have to wait a week. But I personally would just prefer it to be available at launch. And the reason for this is not a selfish one. It's purely because there's a lot of guilds that will want to rush and race and, you know, be the first guild to clear it. And that's fun. And that might not be fun for you, and it might not be fun for me even to see I'm not even level 40 yet and there's guilds clearing Gnomeregan. But that's how they want to play the game. So why delay it by a week and punish that group of people when you can just have it available at launch and it don't affect any of us anyway? Because, like, let's face it, if we missed out on one reset, so, you know, you've got all these guilds that are going in, racing and getting it cleared in the first sort of 24, 30 hours, whatever, and you happen to miss that first reset, so they're getting an extra lockout's worth of loot over you, what difference does it really make? It's a leveling up dungeon. We're going to be level 40. It makes little to no difference. You've seen how many lockouts of BFD you've happened to get, you know, between Phase 1 launching and now Phase 2 coming. So it's not like you're going to get a lack of Gnomeregan by having some of these top guilds that put loads and loads of effort in and loads of preparation into try and get in there and clear it first, by getting one more lockout than you do. There are some alternatives, like you could make the first lockout last a whole week instead of only 3 days. That would then allow for those of us that are a bit slower not to actually lose out on that first lockout, if you like. But for me personally, the fact is not everybody does need to be able to clear the content in the first lockout or even step foot in there in the first lockout. Some people might need some gear from the level 40 dungeons first before they can even go in and clear it. So I don't really agree with the fact that we should be punishing the people that want to go in and they want to, you know, race for world first and be one of the first or top 10 guilds even to clear Gnomeregan, because that's what they find fun. Taking away from other people's fun to, I don't know, make us feel like we're not missing out on something. I'm not really a fan. Now, I did mention in the intro about the whole changing of the way that we get content and what content we actually get. And it really is alluding to some of these things that are going on Twitter in particular. I can only speak for myself, and I check Twitter occasionally. If I was to say once a week, that's probably exaggerating, because it's not the place I expect to go and get information directly from the developers. It should either be in the form of blue posts that are going on the official World of Warcraft forums, or preferably on the Battle.net launcher. So while I love this open communication from the devs, like from people like Agrand, I feel like Twitter is starting to become a bit of a weird place for it to sit. And I know you're probably like, man, you're old, you know, like we're always on Twitter. Maybe you are, but me personally, it's not where I look for something like this ordinarily. I am having to do it more and more now. But asking for community feedback on something as important as when is the first raid going to launch, as in, is it going to be delayed by a week, you're missing out on lots and lots of feedback from people that don't use Twitter. And don't get me wrong, there'll be people that don't use the forums. But at least the majority of guild discords and stuff like that will have sections set up where when there's a blue post, it pings Discord so everybody can go and see it. And if it's on a blue post, Wowhead will pick up on it instantly, whereas if it's a tweet, they might not pick up on it as quick. I just really like what Blizzard are doing at the moment in terms of getting feedback and seeing what people want. I'm just not really that keen on the format. Let me know in the comments if that's just a me problem, or does it bother you a little bit that there's official sort of communications going out that actually affect Season of Discovery decision making from the devs, and it's on Twitter. And this is a bit of a strange one, but it's something that I would absolutely love to see. So while people were questioning Agrand and tagging him in posts about, should we be allowing people to stack up 25 quests to hand in at launch and all of that, which I'm absolutely fine with, by the way. Again, I think giving you something to do now, getting your quest log stacked up to be able to get a few levels at launch, I don't see anything wrong with that. For any of you that have played more than just Season of Discovery, you'll know we've been doing that for years. It's just a common occurrence. You stacking up quests ready for when your XP bar appears again, and you get a big chunk of XP. So I don't disagree that that should be a thing. So what Agron said in this message was, I'd maybe not make assumptions at this moment that that will be your only option. And what that was in reply to was the whole questing and stacking up quests, or as soon as the game launches, just going in and dungeon grinding all the way to level 40, so you don't really even see much of the outdoor world. So it's as if he was alluding to there might be other ways to get experience. Now, it's quite common practice in other games to be able to get experience from crafting. There was even games as far back as Star Wars Galaxies where you could play the game in entirety and really enjoy it and spend as much time on there as anybody else without even fighting anything. Like completely non-combat ways of leveling and non-combat professions. And I know that's obviously in other games as well, but for anyone who's known me for a while, Star Wars Galaxies, that was my jam. So while straight away when you hear, there might be other ways to get XP, you're thinking, there's a lot of PvP going on, isn't there? In Season of Discovery, big PvP scene at the moment. Maybe we're going to start getting XP from Battlegrounds, which, don't get me wrong, that would be amazing. And actually, that's something I would implement personally. But wouldn't it be cool if it was a bit further than that and you did get XP based on what you was crafting, and you could get XP from gathering, which we know XP from gathering came in later on down the line anyway. But yeah, it was just a little like, maybe this could be something that happens that piqued my interest, and I thought, well, I'll share it with you guys. What do you think in the comments? What would be a great addition that maybe we've never even seen in retail, a way that you could get XP where it wouldn't be faster than going out questing or doing dungeons or stuff like that, but it would just be maybe a fun way for you to get XP, like if you did enjoy professions, just as an example. And then I just wanted to touch on the current server population and overall looking at faction balance as well, because I've never ever seen it look so healthy. And I know on the PvP servers it's forced faction balance, but even on the PvE servers it's not really bad. There's still no 100% Horde or 100% Alliance servers, which I'm shocked at, actually. I expected to see PvE servers with, this is the Horde PvE server, this is the Alliance PvE server, but that's not happened yet. But looking at this week on week, so from the 22nd to the 12th, which obviously was going to be not quite as busy as other times because it was over the Christmas period, there was a total of 374,000 people raiding, because this does look at passes. So it looks at how many people are physically logged on Warcraft logs during this period. So we went from 375k rounding up, and then after the new year it was up to 464,000, and it's now even outperforming that at 472,000. And the reason I think this is a big deal is because we're at the back end of the phase. This should be the time where it is literally the quietest. I know our guild is not really doing a great deal because we're just waiting for Phase 2, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are probably even back playing Wrath or maybe playing retail or other games while they wait for Phase 2. So to see that it's actually still climbing, even though it's right at the end of a phase, just shows how much of a positive experience Season of Discovery has been. I know there's another way you could look at that, and you could be, hang on, Scott, yeah, it's because people have had more time to level more alts and raid on more alts, and don't get me wrong, that could definitely play a part to it, but I also see a lot of people that were probably raiding on 4 or 5 characters before that might only just be raiding on 1 or 2 now. So while it's not an exact science on what we can extrapolate from this, it's still a really, really good sign, especially when you compare it to Wrath of the Lich King, which absolutely just pains me to look at with only 238,000 people raiding. And then when you look at some of these faction balance, it just doesn't exist. And the next thing I wanted to touch on was professions, because WoW had put a brilliant post out showing all the real sort of sought after recipes that people are going to be wanting to craft, either to actually use or consumable wise for raids in the next phase. Now, we all are assuming that we're going to be able to get to 225 in the next phase. There's been other random numbers thrown around on podcasts and on different videos saying maybe they cap it at 200, maybe they cap it at 210. I've looked and I can see good reason for actually capping it slightly lower than 225, and that would purely come down to actually the recipes that gnomes are going to have access to at that level that everybody else isn't. And on top of that, if we was going to 150 at 25, then we know at level 40 we get 225, then at 50 you would assume it would be 300. Now professions are done before the level 60 phase, and if they want to add more items, I don't know, maybe it makes that a little bit more awkward, so they could actually put it at, let's say, 200 and then 250 and then 300. Like, I have actually looked at some specific examples where recipes would make sense capping at lower than 225, but I just don't know if they're going to go to that much effort for the sake of, 5, 10, maybe 15 points of engineering or 15 points of tailoring or, So my guess would be probably 225, but they might surprise us and do something different. But working off the basis of it being 225, you can have a look through this post and see some pretty good recipes that you're going to now be able to start using. Like being able to get 12 stamina food, which is going to be pretty big. Dragon's Breath Chili, just for extra damage. Restorative potions that could be huge in PvP. Oil of Immolation, again from Alchemy, which actually does some half-decent damage and people will be using. Starting to be able to get greater mana potions and things like that are going to be useful as well. But if you were to take Elixir of Agility just as an example, because this is going to be one that a lot of people will be using because 15 agility for your rogues, hunters, ferals, whatever. You can start looking at what they require, things like Strangle Kelp and Goldthorn, and knowing that these are going to be in high demand. So being able to get these stocked up early and start getting rid of them as quick as possible before prices tank is probably going to be worthwhile. You're also going to start being able to get half-decent enchanting recipes now. We know enchants at 25 have been a little bit lackluster, but you're going to actually start getting things that give +5. So like 5 strength on bracers or 5 intellect on bracers, 5 strength on gloves at 225, assuming we get to 225. So enchants actually start to become a lot more important as well now. Also going to get access to the new solid weight stones and solid sharpening stones. I would probably hazard a guess that we're going to see something similar in terms of extra hit from Gnomragon like we did in BFD, because still, even at level 40, getting hit on gear is obviously extremely sparse. So I think we will see ways that that's actually assisted through the Gnomragon raid, which over the next 3 or 4 days, I would say we're going to start to see a lot more coming out. Because actually, again, another Twitter post, Nora Valletta did say that they're excited to share more about Phase 2 soon, including a sneak peek of the new Gnomragon raid, the Stranglethorn Val PvP event, Battleground matchmaking updates, and more. Battleground matchmaking updates is going to be interesting. Is there going to be solo queues? WoW had also put out a post about community wish list for runes for each class, which I'll put a link in the description below if you want to go and have a look at that. I was going to cover it, but I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be doing something quite similar over the next couple of days anyway. So if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.